Hi everyone, my name's Alexandra and I have an Instagram called FibreBound and I thought I'd start a podcast, so welcome to the very first awkward episode. I am drinking a coffee this morning. This is my second cup for the day. I'm drinking it in my summer sock camp mug. And this is a mug that I got through the Crazy Sock Ladies Etsy store last year. And I absolutely love this mug. It's so lovely to drink out of. So if you have a little bit of time and you want to listen to me talk about my knitting, then welcome. I just finished up Vlogmas, my second Vlogmas actually, and really enjoyed the process of capturing my days and talking about my knitting. So I thought it might be a great opportunity while I'm in the mode of recording to start a podcast. I live in Adelaide, Australia, with my husband and 2 sons and our lovable dog Shorty. You can find me on Instagram as FibreBound or on Ravelry as Ali Pay. I have been knitting since around 2018. I started knitting because one of my very good friends at work brought me a blanket into work one day, and this blanket she'd hand knitted after work, and it was just so amazing. And I was so in awe of the skill that it took to make this blanket that I snuggle up under every evening on the couch, that a few months later, after I saw her bringing in many blankets for our colleagues, I asked her to teach me to knit. She showed me the basics, and then I sort of dabbled in it for a very extended period, probably about 6 months, just would pick it up at craft nights, which happen about every 2 to 4 weeks. And eventually one day was inspired to go buy some yarn and start an actual project rather than working on my little learning scarf, as I like to call it, which has never been finished, by the way. So I went to my local Knitcrate and picked up some acrylic yarn because I didn't know much about yarn at all, and decided I was going to knit myself a blanket in garter stitch in 8-ply or DK weight yarn on a 4.5mm needle. I cast on 180 stitches and off I went, and I would knit every evening after work. We went on a holiday to Queensland and I took it with me and got a good chunk done on that trip. And there was a lot of car knitting at that point. That was my first car knitting experience. And I got pretty quickly bored with that project and decided I wanted to branch out and try something different. My sister-in-law was pregnant at the time with her second baby, and so I decided, with about 2 weeks to go before we were heading on this trip, that I was going to knit her a baby hat. I had barely mastered the knit and purl stitches at this point. My tension was all over the place. But I found a pattern and I decided I really wanted some texture because I was worried about my tension, and I thought texture would hide the tension issues a little bit. So I knit her a baby hat. I'll pop a picture up for you to see what that hat turned out like. It was actually not too bad considering it was my first time ever using DPNs. First time knitting in the round, first time doing any sort of shaping, decreasing or lace, but I found YouTube to be an amazing source of learning for me in that project, and I was able to finish a hat in a pretty quick time frame. I don't know, I think it took me maybe a week to finish, and that sort of sparked my obsession with knitting. And I really haven't looked back since, and I knit pretty much every day since then. So that was around 2018. Oh no, that would have been 2019, early 2019. So FibreBound was born in the October of that year. I was in hospital with my oldest son, who had just had a ruptured appendix and had some complications after surgery. So we were in hospital for 9-10 days. And towards the end of his recovery, once everything was starting to sort of settle a little bit, I'd been knitting some socks while in hospital and a baby jumper for a gift knit for a friend as well. And I thought, you know what, I'm really loving this activity, this new hobby, this new obsession. So I may as well start a page to start sharing my makes. So I started the FibreBound page on Instagram in 2019 in around October and got even more obsessed. So yeah, all the knits, hats, jumpers, scarves. Well, scarves aren't really my favourite things to knit, but I do knit them occasionally. Shawls, I've gotten a love for shawls, and socks. I remember when I first saw my socks on Instagram pages and I thought, wow, like, why would anyone knit socks? And now I am one of those people and I love knitting them. They are so satisfying, such a satisfying, quick project. And in the course of all of that exploration, I found a love for hand-dyed yarn and wool, and I don't work with acrylic anymore, which is possibly why some of my first projects are not finished. So, welcome to my little piece of the internet. I'm hoping to show you some of my works in progress, some of my finished objects today, and a little bit of future knitting, as well as an acquisition or two that I have made in the last month or so. So let's get started. I hope you have your cup of coffee or tea or whatever it is that you like to drink, and maybe a knitting project with you so you can knit along with me as I show you some of my makes. Okay, so finished objects. I have two today. These are just ones that I finished in the last few weeks, last month actually, just before New Year's. So Happy New Year, by the way. It's 2021 now. And I finished 2 pairs of socks in December. So first up, I will show you my Advent socks. So these are the yarn is by the Cozy Knitter. It is the 24 stripe Advent skein, and I used the contrast bare yarn that was included in that and did an afterthought heel for these ones. I decided, this was the second year that I decided to knit the Cozy Knitter Advent skein. I really enjoyed knitting that in 2019 Advent and decided I really wanted to do it again. So I bought the yarn a while ago and was really happy when I was able to open it on the 1st of December and saw these beautiful colours. It kind of reminded me of Christmas lollies or something very childhood-like. It was really quite lovely to open up that package. And I knit these on a 2.25mm needle or a US one. I do a 56 stitch sock for myself, especially when it's a vanilla sock. I like a 2x2 rib at the top on the cuff. I knit them top down and I do a rounded toe at the bottom. Now for the afterthought heel, I used sometime during 2020, I made my husband a pair of socks, and that was the first time I tried the Kirby Werby afterthought heel tutorial and really enjoyed knitting that. So that's what I did here. I don't think I actually referred to the video while I was doing it, so that was pretty impressive that I was able to get it done. But I have done it a couple of times in recent months, so that's made it a little bit more easier to remember how to do it. So these are my Advent socks, which I absolutely love. Can't wait to wear these. It's rather hot at the moment, so not much knitwear is getting worn. But once the cooler months come along, I will definitely get a lot of wear out of these. Now there is a second sock, but it's not on the blocker, so there you go. There are my Advent socks. My second finished object are the Morning Coffee socks by, it's a pattern by LITTON, the Crazy Sock Lady. She is someone who has been a huge inspiration to me. Seeing how fast she knits her socks and how much joy they give her have really inspired me to spend more time on knitting socks, and I just love the process, absolutely love it. These are the Morning Coffee Socks by LITTON, and there's a beautiful texture in this pattern that you might be able to see there. Oops, first time doing this, so apologies if you can't see what I'm trying to show you. These are knit from the top down as well. There's a heel flap and gusset on these ones, which I actually quite enjoy, the heel flap and gusset process. I do like the fit of those as well, so they're quite a joy to knit. And it's a paid for pattern, so I won't give too much away, but it's a really easy repeat to remember. I think I was about maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 repeats in before I was able to memorize it and could read the knitting to make sure I was on the right row. I did mark every repeat to make sure that I was keeping track of where I was up to, with some light bulb stitch markers. So that was a really fun knit, and funnily enough, I did cast on these ones back in, I think, October, and I only finished them just before New Year's Eve. The day before New Year's Eve. But the second sock, I had only maybe done 1 repeat of the pattern before I picked them up after Christmas, and I was able to knit the rest of that sock in a couple of days. So it's a really quick, satisfying knit. Granted, the period between Christmas and New Year is generally very quiet for us, so there's a lot of knitting time, which I really love. So that's my second finished object for today. I have woven my ends in, but I don't tend to cut off the excess until after I've blocked them. They have been washed and blocked, but I haven't quite got around to the cutting of the strings yet. I'll do that before I wear them, I guess. Okay, so the next, actually maybe I'll just let you know, I knit my socks on magic loop. Usually, or these 2 pairs anyway, were knit on magic loop. And I use the CHRISTOFFERS needles for that on a 32-inch cord. It's probably my preferred way to knit socks. Having said that, my current work in progress is not knit on magic loop, and I'll show you those when I get to works in progress. But funnily enough, I like to cast on with a 9-inch circular. I just find joining in the round to be so much more straightforward on a little 9-inch. And then I will transfer those stitches onto the 32-inch needles. And yeah, that's the way these were both knit, these pairs, which is probably why they flew for me. They really are a quick knit when I do it that way. But let's move on to works in progress. I have a few to show you today. So let's start off with my oldest one, actually. So my oldest one is in this beautiful bag by the Knitting Dentist. So Krista is a dear friend of mine. She and I met through Instagram. Probably the week that I opened up my Instagram account, we seemed to find each other, and this friendship blossomed, and we inspire each other and we message each other quite a lot, which is the joy of Instagram, that you can really find great friendships with like-minded people on there. And she sent me this bag sometime in April, maybe last year. Sometime in 2020, she made this bag for me and she sent it to me, and I absolutely love it. It is such a beautiful bag. So she made this very impressive make, and in here I am keeping my FELIX pullover. So my FELIX pullover was cast on during COVID stay-at-home periods. Australia's been quite lucky with the COVID shutdowns as a general rule. Certainly the state that I live in has probably had the lowest impact of most other states. I'm in South Australia, and during April and May we were in a pretty strict lockdown at that point, and I cast on the FELIX pullover on the 1st of April. I checked today and I thought, wow, this has been on the needles for a long time. So I cast this on the 1st of April, and this is where I'm at. So I finished the first sleeve just before New Year's Eve, and then sort of halted on starting the second sleeve, which, I mean, I could have finished this before New Year's really, but I'd like to knit on other things as well, so I haven't. But I did cast on the second, or picked up the stitches for the second sleeve last night. So I am about 7 rows in on that sleeve. It will be done pretty quickly though. The first sleeve was only about 96 rows in total, including the cuff. And yeah, I can imagine that this will be done within the next week or so, if not sooner. But I am enjoying this, and I do love this pattern. It's a raglan sweater. It is designed by CHRISTOFFERS. I'll pop her name down below. And I'm knitting it in Knitcrate yarn. It's the Vidalana Ascendance, and it's in Broken Stones. This is actually a sport weight yarn, but it is so squishy and such a lovely air-filled yarn that I am actually knitting it almost at the worsted weight gauge that the pattern calls for. But it just means that I'm not using that much of it really. This is my third ball, and I'm working on the little end bit of a ball to start this sleeve off, and then we'll incorporate this one. And yeah, it's just a beautiful yarn to work with, and will be really lovely to wear as well. This yarn is 100% fine Peruvian Highland wool, but it's really soft. I tend to be quite sensitive to scratchy wools, and this isn't scratchy at all for me. So I'm really enjoying this yarn. I will have quite a bit left over, so I'm not sure what I'll do with that, but that's okay. It's just really lovely, and it's a lovely project. And honestly, if I was to have focused on this and not gotten a bad case of cast-on-itis last year, I definitely would have finished it within a few weeks, but I tend to cast on a lot of projects. So that's my sweater whip, and once I finish that, I am looking forward to starting another sweater. I haven't decided what yet, but I'm trying not to think about it until this one is done, seeing as it's been on the needles for so long. So my next whip is going to be my second oldest whip, I guess. I really don't have that many. This one is in my Sandy by the Lakeside bag. So Sandy by the Lakeside is probably one of the first YouTubers that I found that did a knitting podcast. And I fell in love with watching her talk about her knitting and seeing her project bags, and got pretty obsessed with buying her project bags as well. So I've accumulated quite a collection over the last few years. But I love this one for my Stephen West shawls, and this is the second time that I'm participating, or did participate, in the Mystery Knit Along with Stephen West. And so this is housing my Slipstravaganza shawl. So it is rather big at the moment, but I am on the final section. Actually, I've put it on an extra long cable, so let's see if I can stretch this out. So I am on the final section. I only have about 14 rows left to go. I've decided that I'm going to do not the full version. I'll do the smaller border, but that's sort of where I'm at the moment. This is an absolute stunner of a shawl. There's a lot of slip stitches and texture here, and I can't wait to have this one off the needles and be able to wear it over this coming winter. There are hundreds of ends to weave in, unfortunately, even though I did use Stephen's Weave and Steven technique on some of the yarn changes, but I still have quite a lot of ends to weave in. So for this project, I'm using yarns by Lovebird Lane. Julianne is a local to me hand dyer, and she's super talented. I absolutely love her work. And over quarantine, I got a little bit buy happy and bought quite a bit of yarn. So my main colour is this beautiful speckled yarn. It is called Biscuit, and it's a one-of-a-kind yarn or colourway, and it's very pretty. So this design called for 2 skeins of this, and I'm on my 2nd skein now. So that's my main colour. My contrast colour one is a colour called Flushed. There you go, hopefully you can see that. Contrast colour 2 is Intangible, and it is a beautiful colourway. And my contrast colour 3, my ball's getting a little messy, is Quarantine 15. This colourway has my heart. It is just so pretty. So these yarns are mainly a bamboo sock base. So they are an 80-20, so 80% superwash BFL and 20% bamboo. So this is Julianne's, one of Julianne's tags. That's her logo there. And it's Lovebird Lane yarns. Yep. Absolutely stunning. But the final colourway, the Quarantine 15, is actually a merino sock. It's a 75-25. I'm usually a bit funny about mixing bases, but this colour just had to be in this shawl. So yes, it's actually working up really nicely together. I love working with both of these types of yarns, so that's been a real joy to work on. The current stitch count is 900 and something stitches on my needles, so it's taking me about 40 minutes to 50 minutes to get through a row. So I've just joined Natalie from Knitty Natty. She is running the Make 30 for 30 knit along again, which is just a nice easy knit along. You can knit 30, you can knit 40, you can knit 50. You can knit less or more. She's not really holding us accountable for that. We get to choose how long we knit for. But I've made it a goal to knit at least 1 row a day on this. I have 14 rows to go, so in 14 days I'll be finished the knitting. But then I still have an I-cord bind off to do on 900 stitches, which I assume is going to take me another week or so. And all the ends to weave in. So I'm hoping to be done with this one by the end of the month. Today is the 4th of January, so hopefully I can accomplish that and have this finished by the start of February. So that's my 2nd work in progress. And then we have another shawl. Now it's unusual for me to have more than 1 shawl on the needles, but I could not resist this cast on. The Slipstravaganza was cast on in October. The mystery knit along runs in October. And in November, my friend Krista and I, so Krista who made my bag that's holding the FELIX pullover, she also made this bag for me. So this is a beautiful drawstring pouch. Just closes like that. Has a beautiful handle. And she sent me some yarn, which is absolutely stunning. And we are knitting a shawl together. I sent her some yarn back during quarantine as well, just to cheer her up. And I sent her some Chelsea Luxe yarn. And as an amazing friend that she is, she sent me some Explorer Knits and Fibres. And this arrived sometime in October, maybe November. And we have the Denali sock base. This is the, let's say it right, it's Trastevere, I think. It's a 75-25, and this colorway is Roma. And it's so pretty. So we decided, I sent her a 2 skein shawl kit as well, and we decided to cast on the Drifter shawl by TAMY GORE. So this is my progress so far on the Drifter. It's getting quite long now. I'm using the Trastevere as my main colour and the Roma as my contrast colour. And we're moving along with this one. This Progress Keeper here is by Mo&Mi. So Peter is a local to me bag maker, and she makes notions as well. And it was actually the other half of a Progress Keeper I sent to Krista about a year ago. So Krista has the other one of these, and I like to think of her when I'm using it. Like we're having a wine together while we knit. So this is now section 5 complete, and that marker is actually showing how much I've done since New Year's. So yeah, I picked this up again just after Christmas, and that's how much I've done in the last week or so. We're trying to make sure we knit these sections together. So we've just finished section 5 and we're up to section 6, and we're supporting each other along the way, and we have a hashtag as well. I'll pop it down below so you can check that out. So we have 2 hashtags. We have an ACROSSTHESEAKAL hashtag and a DRIFTTOGETHERKAL hashtag. We've decided that both of our birthdays are in November, so we thought it would be fun to have a yearly knit along together that we cast on in between our birthdays. So that is my 3rd work in progress. Now my final work in progress is a sock that I cast on the 1st of January. This is my New Year's Day cast on, and this is in my Forget It Not Designs project bag. Janet is a bag maker here in Adelaide, and she sent me this beautiful bag that is perfect for a sock knitting project last year, and it is so pretty. She's done such an amazing job. The inside fabric's really nice too. I'll link her down below as well for you. So my New Year's cast on is as part of the Desert Vista Dye Works monthly knit along. So Susan this is the 7th year I think she's running this monthly knit along, where you knit a pair of socks with her yarn, 1 pair each month. You start on the 1st of the month and you have to finish by the end of the month. And I thought I'd participate in that this year. I did accumulate a bit of her yarn in 2020. Again, quarantine shopping hits again. So I decided that I would make this my New Year's cast on, and I chose the colorway Spider Zombody Man. Spider Zombody Man, and absolutely love this color. It is just so pretty. I picked this yarn when I bought it specifically to make socks for my son. My son will be 13 in February, and he's always been partial to Spider-Man and, well, any sort of superhero stuff. So I chose this yarn specifically to make him a pair of socks. And I cast it on a New Year's Day, and I cast it on my 9-inch circulars, and actually quite enjoyed the process and didn't bother switching onto Magic Circle. So I left these on my 9-inch circular needles by CHRISTOFFERS, and I cast on a 64 stitch sock for him. He's growing very fast. He's still quite skinny mini, but he's just shot up so much. He's outgrown me in the over Christmas. I think he's taller than me now, which is really sad. He's my baby, and he's now taller than me. So I figured if I made him a sock that would last him a little while. He loves the hand knit socks that I made for him last year. So I'm making these for him. And so 64 stitches, 2x2 rib, and I'm just knitting these vanilla at the moment. But my plan for the heel for these ones is to do the magic heel socks. Now I saw reference to this in Heather, Fourth Star Knits podcast. She mentioned she was knitting some magic heel socks, and I'm like, what is this magic heel? So I looked it up, and it looks really quite interesting. It's there's no heel flap, no gusset. There's just a slightly different texture by the looks of it on the heel. I haven't read that part of the pattern properly yet. I'm just trying to get to 5 inches here first. But the pattern is a paid for pattern. It's by Autumn ACORN, and it basically, my hope is that it will allow the sock to grow with him if I make the heel in this format. It means that I'm not specifically putting in a heel flap or gusset, and when his feet grow, which they are growing, he'll be able to wear these for a bit longer, hopefully. So I'm really interested to see how that will knit up, and I'll be sure to report back on it once I've done that part. So this is just also, I forgot to mention, it's a 75-25 base. It's on the Desert Vista Dye Works Viso base. I think that's how you say it. Viso. Pronunciation's always a complication for me. And I mark every 10 rows, and I'm up to, 10, 20, 30, 40. I've done 40 rows so far, and I'm aiming to get to about 50 to 60 before I start the heel part. I'm using a progress keeper here. This progress keeper is by Lovebird Lane, and that's just showing my progress when we went to the cinemas the other night that I'll talk about later. So yeah, that's my last work in progress at this point in time, or at least my last active work in progress. There are some others hanging around in project bags, but I'm not working on them at the moment. So these are my active ones that I'm working on every day, every couple of days. So that's it for works in progress. Let's move on to future knitting. I've been very careful not to cast on anything new until I finish a couple of these projects. I'm really keen to finish the FELIX pullover and the Slipstravaganza shawl in particular. Once those two are off the needles, I'm hoping to cast on some new things. But something I've been really wanting to cast on, and I don't know that I'll be able to wait until those things are finished, is some yarn I purchased in December. So this is another Lovebird Lane obsession for me. So Lovebird Lane brought out her 2020 Christmas collection, and this is mulled wine. It's a 75-25 merino nylon blend, and yes, it's a sock yarn, and yes, I will probably still make some socks out of it. But I just love these colours so much that I actually thought they would make a lovely cowl. So I've decided to knit a brioche cowl with this, and using this beautiful yarn as my contrast colour. Perhaps, we'll see. I'll start it and we'll see how it goes. This contrast colour is one by Ashen Oak Yarn. So Ashen Oak yarn is no longer dyeing yarn, which is a real shame. Monica's very talented with her yarn dyeing, but this is a colorway she sent me last year, and it's called Windsong, and I thought it would actually contrast really nicely in a brioche with this yarn. I did consider using a cream, but my concern with cream around my neck is that it'll get filthy really quickly, makeup and whatnot. So I thought I'd use a darker color for that. And yeah, let's see how long I can resist casting this one on. But that's some future knitting that I'm thinking of. I also got an advent. The last 2 years I've received advents one from Ashen Oak Yarns in 2019 and one from Sweet Skein of Mine in 2020. I absolutely love these minis and these yarns, and the fade in them is so pretty. So I would like to cast one of those on as a project throughout the year. The other one I may leave until next advent, but I would like to get one of those projects started. Now I'm still in two minds about which shawl to make with them. There are so many beautiful ones out there, but I'm really sort of thinking the Adventurer shawl, or one of the Amber O'Brien advent patterns is what I'm strongly considering. But I'll let you know once I've decided for sure on that one. And I guess my final yarny thing is our latest acquisition. So I have been trying not to buy too much yarn, but just before Christmas, a homespun house posted that they were giving free shipping internationally, so I couldn't resist, and I ordered a skein from them, as well as a progress keeper from Simply Serving, and they actually arrived just before New Year's Day, I think. Yeah, just before New Year's Day, so it was actually pretty quick shipping considering it was free shipping. But I ordered this Gold Stellina fingering yarn. It's an 80 superwash merino, 15% nylon. Not sure what the other 5% is. Oh, 20 stellina. That doesn't, no, not quite sure. It says 80 superwash, 15% nylon, 20 stellina, but that doesn't add up to 100, so I'm not quite sure. But this is called Merry and Bright. It's by the Homespun House, and it is very, very nice. It's a beautiful pink with little green speckles and red speckles, and I'm really excited to work with this at some point. I don't know that it will wait till next Christmas. I may need to cast something on sooner. It is very pretty. So that's it for the knitting content. I do have a few questions that were asked of me on Instagram. I put a call out on Instagram to see if anyone had any questions for me. Being that this is my first podcast, I was a bit concerned that I might not have enough content for you, but I actually think that I've been going and talking for a lot longer than I had thought I would. But one of the questions that was asked of me was, what are my go-to sock yarns? So this question was asked to me by my friend Monica, and I just had to think about this, and I love hand-dyed yarn a lot, but I'm also conscious of the expense of hand-dyed yarn, and knitting socks with it exclusively is not something I want to do, though I do knit a lot of socks with hand-dyed yarn as well. But I have brought out a couple of skeins of yarns that I have enjoyed working with that are much more affordable and are lovely to work with. So the first yarns that I thought I'd talk about are some from a local Australian big box style store, so Knitcrate, and they brought out some sock yarn this year. They're not renowned for their big range of natural wools, in my opinion, and certainly they don't stock any hand-dyed yarns or anything like that. It's all very commercial. But I did find this yarn, I said this year, in 2020. So it's the Maker sock yarn, and hopefully you can see that. And it is 75 wool, 25% nylon blend. And I've got two colorways here that I quite like and I'm looking forward to knitting with. So do they have names? They have numbers. So this darker one is 342. I'm pretty sure their website does show names, but they're not on the label. So it's 342. And this corally one is 360. Now these are quite affordable. I think they retail for around $12 to $15 Australian, which is pretty good considering hand-dyed yarn is a minimum of $30 Australian. These are really lovely, and I knit my husband a pair of socks in a different colorway in 2020 for his birthday, and they've been holding up really well. He loves those socks, and I did enjoy knitting on them as well. So looking forward to using this year as well, or some of these this year as well. I've picked up a few of the colours. And the other yarn I wanted to mention was actually Knit Picks FELIX. So this is quite affordable, especially if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. Getting that shipped to Australia can be expensive unless Knit Picks is having a really good shipping sale, or I'm deciding to buy a lot of stuff so I don't have to pay for shipping. So this is Knit Picks FELIX. This is one of the colorways I have in my stash. This one is called Acrobat, I think. Yes, it's Acrobat by FELIX and Knit Picks. Whoops, sorry. There we go, I think that's better. They're beautiful self-striping yarns, and I think this is probably the answer to your question, Monica. Probably my favorite type of yarn to use for socks is self-striping, which I've just come to the realization now. I do find self-striping so much fun to work up. Whether it's hand-dyed or not, it's definitely a joy to knit with. The stripes are addictive. You just can't wait to get to the next one and the next one, and all of a sudden your sock is finished. So thank you for asking that question, Monica. I really appreciate it. And I guess we'll move on to life stuff, back end of the podcast. So, life stuff. It is school holidays at the moment, and I love school holidays. It means we can really slow down and take a break. We've done some beach walks, we've done some walks around the river, and spending a lot of time as a family, which is just amazing to be able to do that, especially while I'm on leave from work as well. I'm on leave still for another week. Today is Monday and I go back next Monday. So I'm very excited to have a bit of downtime with the family and just relax, really. So we're working on a family puzzle at the moment, where we received a puzzle during just the lead up to Christmas. I received it during my craft party breakup as a Secret Santa gift. And it's a 1,000-piece puzzle, and it's a slow going one actually. This one's taking us a little bit longer than usual to get through. But there was an evening there that I spent quite a long time away from my knitting working on the puzzle. But that was fun. I really did enjoy making those, especially with my youngest son. He seems to be quite into puzzles. And other than that, my husband and I have been out for some dinner dates. We don't generally do that when the kids are home, but they're with their grandparents for a couple of days. So we went out to sushi the other night and then went to a movie. We saw The Dry, which is a new Australian movie, and I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it or haven't read the book. I read the book a few years ago over this sort of time of year, that quiet time before going back to work after Christmas. It's a book by Jane Harper, and I really enjoyed that read. It was a very addictive read. I think I read that in some record amount of time. And when the movie has come out and been released just now, I thought, what a great movie to go see. My husband loves the outback. He loves the Australian outback and wishes we would live out there, but I'm not that keen. But I thought he'd enjoy seeing that movie, and we really did enjoy it. It was a great night out. But I highly recommend the book if you're keen to see it. So Eric Bana is the main character in that movie, which is fun to see an Australian actor come back and do an Australian movie, because we're so used to seeing Eric Bana in all the American Hollywood movies. It is really nice to see them come back and do something local. But that's it. I don't think I've got anything else to say. My kids are actually coming home very soon. My plan for the rest of the day is to make up their beds nice and fresh. I've washed all of their sheets. I would like to get some of that puzzle done and maybe get some time to knit on my projects today as well. I hope you're having a lovely day, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you've watched this far, I really do appreciate your time. And I am hoping to upload these every couple of weeks approximately. depending on my knitting content. I work full-time normally, so knitting time is very sparse. Lunch breaks and sort of evening knitting are the usual go for me. So we'll see how much progress I make over the next few weeks, and I'll try to check in with you every 2 weeks. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourselves.